you need to kind of marry those two things. I think that's quite a challenge, right? To marry those two skill sets together and then get very good regulatory overview, oversight to the processes. And there's new tools and technologies appearing for that, plus having the skill sets to really engineer really good data processes to maximize, the potential of your customer, to maximize your revenue potential.
This is That Marketing Podcast,
made by marketers for marketers.
Welcome to another episode of That Marketing Podcast, brought to you by Spotly UK. In this episode, we're joined by James Isilay, CEO of data provider Cognism. We address how data gathering has changed with the rise of remote work and how businesses should be thinking about ownership of data, both from a data handling perspective and also from the view of regulatory compliance. I hope you enjoy and happy marketing. Okay, welcome to an episode of That Marketing Podcast, and this time we are joined by James Isilay, the CEO of Cognism, the data provider. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. So, James, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Richard, for having me on the webinar.
So, I mean, data. I almost don't know where to start on this one. I think what occurred to me this morning is we probably talk about data in kind of the abstract. We think of it as sort of existing out there, which is why I thought getting you guys on as a provider would be a really interesting perspective. And so my first question is, obviously, everything has changed over the last 12 to 18 months. So I thought I'd start with what kind of data people now are after that they weren't after before. How's what they need from their data suppliers changed?
Well, I think with people being more remote and not at the end of an office phone, mobile phone data, of course, is more important for outreach in terms of getting high response rates. So there's a number of shifts. One, events are less prominent, and I'm actually just signed up for my first major event in Boston in August. So in the US, it seems events are back alive, but in UK, I mean, again, we've got another wave going on, so it looks like again events are going to be pushed back. So with, I suppose, people attending less events, and also I think really now a shift that work from home is a new normal, a blend of like office and work from home is a new normal. Then of course mobile data is important for our business outreach, and so people looking for more of that data, and then just of course very very clean, as you can meet people physically less, just very clean out data in terms of email data, phone data, so that you can actually outreach and know that not waste time outreaching, so that you can just get more chances to get your message across and win new customers.
Yeah, and I think there's been as CRMs have kind of gotten more complex, I bet there's been probably a tendency to hoard data, like any scrap of things you can pull from LinkedIn or email address or anything it's data, we need it. Do you think there are bits of data that companies are now looking in this new step going, actually that wasn't relevant, we're going to stop doing that, as it led to a kind of cleaning out of the data cupboard, as it were?
I think in general, there's a trend that companies are getting more sophisticated about data. I mean, the US is ahead of us, right? They have more job titles like sales ops, marketing ops, those type of roles. Generally, there is just a general trend to have better CRM systems, better data governance, sales engineering, marketing engineering, like those types of roles, are now, there's a trend to make those roles more prominent, and people just being a lot smarter about their data, making sure that the data is clean, accurate, up to date. I don't know how many CRM systems I've seen, even Salesforce systems, where people just have lots of bad old data in there that doesn't really help the sales funnel, the marketing funnel. Doesn't really, ideally for every company you have all your current customers, you have like every important contact to those customers, and you have good engagement with all those customers, and I think very few companies have that, because they don't have very well engineered data processes in their CRM. Usually most of the data is being injected at the point of sale and the point of new business, and then there's very poor data processes around keeping that data accurate, up to date, and bringing in new contacts on a regular basis. Like that, usually that isn't somebody's job, and so it's done very poorly in a lot of CRM systems. And so, it's of course cheaper to retain a customer and to expand a customer's revenue than it is to win new business. But usually, companies put a lot less resources into that than they do into winning new business. So I think that's being recognized now, and then there's a lot more thought going into the data and customer relationships and just keeping all the data accurate. I think that will be the main shift, as well as alongside a lot of what's this acceleration of a trend to more of a remote world, digital world, because of COVID, which just accelerated a trend that was already there.
Yeah, one of the ways I've seen some companies deal with this is actually having a chief data officer, like putting data really directly in the boardroom. Do you think that's a positive step, or is that kind of putting data into kind of a silo where the opposite view would be data is kind of everyone's responsibility, is the job of the sales team and the marketing team and account managers or customer success, whoever it is, they all need to have that input. Does appointing a chief data officer just pull it out of all those other teams' responsibility?
I suppose that then it depends on the background of that. I mean, there's a split there, right, between the regulatory component, which of course we are all more aware of because of GDPR, TCPA, just new rules coming out on an ongoing basis in different states in the US and different countries in the world. Evolution of GDPR as case history gets set. So there's that point where it's a regulatory piece to actually just govern the data in the right way. So there's a governance perspective from a regulatory perspective there. Now that's important, but it doesn't mean that you then engineered your I guess your revenue processes engineered your data to maximize your revenue processes, right? That's again separate and it requires a different skill set. It really requires somebody that understands CRM systems, sources of data, sales processes, all of that stuff, all of those components, which right now are quite complicated given all the tools and technologies that are there. You really need like an engineer, a geek to kind of like dive into all of that, which is very separate to a regulatory person that looks at it from a regulatory perspective. I think it would be rare to find a data geek who also is a lawyer who really wants to understand all the regulatory aspects. But you need to kind of marry those two things. I think that's quite a challenge, right? To marry those two skill sets together and then get very good regulatory oversight to the processes. And there's new tools and technologies appearing for that, plus having the skill sets to really engineer really good data processes to maximize the potential of your customer, to maximize your revenue potential, which again, there's so much benefits and you can drive so much faster growth by getting that component right, but you need to bring the right people with the right skills in.
Sure. Okay. From that kind of the link between data and revenue, do you think things like physical events are going to bounce back? Because I'm trying to think of the last time I went to a trade show, which is a good 2 years ago. Probably now between you say COVID and the calendar events as it was. I seem to remember that you don't get like the data you get from events is potentially some of the worst quality data. That I got told that some people actually create an email address specifically to hand that out at trade shows so they can funnel the inevitable wave of follow up to that. So do you think they can bounce back, or are people looking at them and going, actually, you know what, we're getting such bad data from them, we can do things better another way?
I always loved events. I love meeting people.
Yeah.
I love
Me too.
I love attending events. And to be honest, like highlight certain highlights of building the Cognism has been a lot of the event shows that we've done, and the contacts I've met have definitely helped with building relationships and finding new contacts and just learning about the industry. So so it's like tentative signs from the US when things fully reopen and people get a lot the society gets a lot more comfortable. I think the US is further ahead of us in terms of opening up, and I suppose not being so as worried about COVID as the UK is at the moment. But of course, UK is going through a new wave at the moment. I've got lots of staff falling ill at the moment with COVID, so it is bad again here. Then it looks at the moment like events will be popular again. People will attend, and they'll bounce back. So yeah, right now I'm attending 2 events this year in the US. So I'm well, I'll report back to you
Yeah,
once
I feel like
once I come back and tell you what it was
we'll do
like.
another podcast after that. Yes.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think they will, because I think that they you can connect customers you can't reach on outbound and on inbound even, and it also gets your brand out there in a different way. So I think it's an important element of any go-to-market strategy is to do events, but you also have to do those well and have people who can do events well, because you can just burn money by doing an event very poorly as well. So again, I think it blends in. I think won't be as strong as it was pre the crisis, but let's see.
Yeah, there's two things I thought of there. One is either events will bounce back because everyone's been so cooped up. They're like, I want to go and see people, and that's where I come from. I'm a very sort of extrovert people person naturally, so being in a huge exhibit center surrounded by noise and things like I'm happy there. That's much better for me. But there's also that kind of competing. We've shut down events and haven't actually lost anything, so why would we go back to it? It'd be interesting to see how that pans out. Yeah, there's a couple of conferences, trade shows in our sector, one that's pushed themselves back for a year, and the other one that's planning to go ahead as we're recording this, and they think we're going to put it off. Because I also wonder if events you'll get a smaller turnout, but you'll get a better turnout. Like you won't, I think you could argue like some people would go to events as a little bit of a jolly before, like, oh yeah, I'm going to a trade show to check out our exhibitors, but really you want to have a day out in London, really.
I always find, like, for me as a CEO, I make a lot of good strategic connections there and have over the years. Because I suppose like I love networking, so for me it's good from that perspective. Yeah, I mean right now I would give budget to it again, but I would agree, right? We've been growing really well without events, so if we put events back in, is it gonna like be a little bit of a top up, or is it gonna be a distraction for the team? And then actually you end up with the same net performance. But now that we are of the right size, I can probably just split out an events team that does that, and then they have a quota to achieve, so then we can see that if they make their on the return on that investment, and then it's split out from the fact that knowing now that the marketing team can achieve what they can achieve without events, then maybe we have a separate events team and they have their own quota.
Yeah, but as a data company, you guys should be perfectly placed to set some targets and
Sure.
put the metrics on there that sometimes are a little bit missing for new venues. I wanted to twist it around a little bit to talk about something that maybe might be a slightly longer term trend of sort of bought data generally. Within marketing automation, email marketing, which is where we sort of sit as a company, it's still like almost a dirty word. That there's a lot of ESPs that will not allow you to send things to purchase data. Do you think as an industry it has gotten significantly better over, I don't know, a couple of years time frame, 5 years, however long the trend's going for?
Right now my view is that now there's like a standard about what makes clean data in terms of doing in terms of how the data is collected, in terms of doing notifications, so you're not doing invisible processing. In the B2B space, I think that now a standard for what is compliant data is kind of set after given where GDPR and the time that we've gone over and how the regulators are approaching it. There's a nice set pattern now to people being able to send in data subject access requests, getting those processed, the regulator dealing with issues, complaints, and that I believe there's a nice process now. And I think, of course, Cognism, we super focus on being the most compliant supplier, making sure that we vet numbers against the do not call list and all of that. So, I'm very comfortable about our positioning, and I'm very comfortable with actually how it's all working, a lot more than I was, say, when GDPR came out. So, we'll see how it evolves, but right now I think that there's a really clear as a cadence with in the B2B data space. I'm less involved in the B2C data space, but I think certainly in the B2B space, it's there's a nice relationship between data subjects, the regulator, and the data companies.
Cool. What's invisible processing? I heard you use that right at the beginning, and I suddenly thought I'm not entirely sure what that is.
Oh, so there was a ruling against Experian just in October of, I believe, 2020. It's on the ICO website, where there was a complaint made against them that they hadn't notified data subjects that they held data on them. So that's what is termed invisible processing. So when you don't do notifications to data subjects, then that's deemed invisible processing. So for us, for instance, we notify everybody that they're in our data asset. So we sent emails to every data subject that they're in our data asset, and then they have a chance to write back and say, okay, we don't want to be in the data asset, and then they remove their details. So in that way, everybody's informed that we hold data on them.
Okay. Right. Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that. It makes sense, but I just thought it's better check, because if I don't know it, then presumably people listening may well not as well. One of the things we've sort of I'll start that again. One of the things that I think we've kept bounce back on is that the last 12 months have kind of just accelerated trends that were there anyway. But just to sort of finish up, do you think there are new trends coming forward for the next 12 months that are brand new, that savvy marketers need to be thinking about in terms of their data?
Well, there's which Google's pushed back on now, the elimination of cookies, right, is going to be a big change. If that does happen, or they might just keep pushing it back. When it gets harder to target people online and target them accurately, that's going to be a shift, because you're going to see on inbound marketing, I suppose, cost per leads going higher. So that would definitely be one trend that would, I think, again, get a lot of companies I've seen run an inbound only strategy. I think there's, I would say that companies missing out on growth if they're not running a outbound and inbound process, because you're just missing on all the outbound growth. There's only a certain portion of the market that's ever looking, that's actually at a point where they're actually actively searching. There's a lot of prospects that when you outreach to them, they're definitely in a pain point, and they definitely want to have a new solution, a new provider, or a new technology, but you need to kind of outreach to them. So I hope, of course, for us, where we're more focused on the outbound side ourselves in terms of our platform, then I think the trend is towards people recognizing that and then doing more outbound, and so I think that's another key trend. So yeah, I say like that. There's also like a consolidation. A bit you saw this week. Zoom info by Chorus.ai in conversational intelligence. You saw Demandbase by Demand Matrix and buying Inside View in the US. So there's a consolidation of tools in the sales and marketing space going together, and I suppose we'll have to see whether people want to buy an all-in-one package that does everything, rather than specialist tools that are kind of best in class. So we'll see, like how that pans out. But that's definitely a trend in terms of consolidation, to just create bigger sales and marketing tech companies that are just larger in size, and then of course can raise money at cheaper rates and command bigger valuations on public markets. So I think that right now for me, those are the kind of two key trends: the ability to target, and also the consolidation of of all these different sales and tech companies coming together and then providing all-in-one platforms.
Yeah, I can see that, because I imagine that the biggest cause of lost data or rubbish data is probably, you get a new sales manager, they bring in a brand new sales system, a brand new prospecting tool, whatever it is, and that pulls in loads of data, but then they move on to another job and that tool falls out of fashion. So if you've got a system that is all in one, you've got a better chance of keeping up to date, because because you're not got a silo of stuff that you.
Yeah, I suppose it will be a bit about if you have like the talent internally in your company to thread these systems together, and with all the best in class systems together, then of course you'll get the best bang for your buck in terms of your actual growth. Like if you don't have that, I suppose like if you need it simplified and you don't really have the internal talent, then an all-in-one solution might make sense if it delivers what it says on the tin, right? So to be seen. So I think it'll that you might find then in terms of SMBs gravitate towards all-in-one platforms, and mid-market enterprise companies will have the talent internally to thread the best-in-class systems together and get better results than the all-in-one platforms. That's typically how it's gone previously. But when you've had all-in-one platforms versus I suppose like engineered systems.
Cool. Okay, I think that's a nice future prediction to wrap the podcast up on. Maybe giving people plenty to think about. So once again, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Marketing Podcast. You clearly have wonderful taste. We hope you found the content useful and enjoyed it. We'd love you to subscribe wherever it is you're listening to us. Maybe leave us a review. If you can think of a topic that you'd like us to cover, or even if you fancy coming on the podcast and sharing your own experience on a particular topic, you can reach us at marketingteam@spotler.co.uk. Thanks once again, and happy marketing.